We'll begin the news at this hour in West Africa, Nigeria. The International Monetary Fund has said Nigeria's economic growth is projected to decline from 3.3% in 2022 to 2.9% in 2023. The Washington-based lender made this known in its World Economic Outlook, Navigating Global Divergences, released on Tuesday. The IMF also projected that the country's economy would grow at 3.1% in 2024, with the negative effect of high inflation and consumption taking hold. The IMF said global headline inflation is expected to steadily decline from its peak of 8.7% in 2022 annual average to 6.9% in 2023 and 5.8% in 2024. And now joining me to talk about these is business, political and social policy analyst Kenneth Ikenwa. Good morning, Kenneth. Good afternoon, Kenneth. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Now, the International Monetary Fund said its new prediction for Nigeria that the nation's growth is projected to decline from 3.3%, from previous year to 2.9% this year, and then grow by 3.1% in 2024. Do you agree with this prediction?
Oh, yes, most definitely. The data and the prediction is alarming, and it should be a wake-up call. But over the years, I have consistently said and maintained my position that the IMF continues to tell us not what we need to hear, but fail to also tell us what we want to hear. So they tell us that we are going to experience growth or we're not going to experience growth, but what actually do we need to hear? The Nigerian tale and the Nigerian situation is a tale and a story of two ends of the straight line. One is that of excesses, and the other is that of shortages. So we can see that we have so many excesses, like the excess for demand, the excess of crude oil, for instance, but we do have a large amount, an avalanche of shortages to cater for these excesses, and in the case of crude oil, to actually refine this crude oil and make the best out of it. So we must bridge the gap between these excesses and shortages for us to maintain macroeconomic growth and stability. So It is a good data coming up quite late in the year, but it is a wake-up call and a signal for us to start preparing to possibly reverse the economic trend.
Okay. Now, Kenneth, the IMF says that debt market have started to reflect tighter monetary policy, whereas spreads to risk-free government debt have stayed more or less constant. Now, this suggests that credit conditions have tightened more than ever. How can developing nations sort of attract funding internationally?
Thank you. That's a beautiful question, which most developing nations across the southern divide of the global hemisphere have to attend to. Now, basically, what some of the developing economies like Nigeria have failed to do is to build the necessary infrastructure, necessary investment, necessary incentive pivots that will attract both foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. But from the trend that I have watched over the years, I can also see that there is a dubious alarm that indicates a growth in investment. And what is that? What we have the most coming into Nigeria, which the data may not speak about, is that we have more foreign portfolio investments than we have foreign direct investments. So what developing nations need to do is to put together the relevant infrastructure, put together the relevant incentives and the relevant institutional reforms that will remove voids and constraints, and that will place emphasis on accommodating, attracting, and supporting foreign direct investments. These foreign direct investments will have direct multiplier effects on the economy much more than the foreign portfolio investments. So there must be an economic paradigm shift that will ensure that there is an environment that is munificent enough to support, to attract, and to emphasize that what we need is foreign direct investment and not just foreign portfolio investments. So with these three eyes, we can position ourselves to attract maximum investment and make developing countries, and in Africa, Nigeria, the number one investment destination of choice. It is very possible.
Now, let's look at the latest revision, which reflects a lower forecast for China. It was revised downward by, 0.2 percentage point for this year. and then by 0.3% for the year to come, 2024, to growth of about 5.0% for this year, and then 4.2%, for next year, 2024. Now, with these reviews given to China that has helped, fund many projects in Africa, do you think it will become, a welcome review of how African nations pay back what they owe?
Well, the statistics, again, the word alarming is quite recurrent in my mouth today. The statistics, again, as it concerns China, is quite alarming because it has a grave effect for beneficiary nations, especially those in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, what China is experiencing is that China has excess capacity. And much more than that, you would also agree with me that China over the years, in the last 2 to 3 years, has been having a lot of political challenges with respect to how they are growing the economy and to what markets that they are permitted, by the superpowers to particularly expand their capabilities and their wealth to. So African nations have to borrow a cue from this. We need to come back together because it's very important that we ensure that the debt/GDP ratio is not too low, so that we can have capital to be able to fund capital expenditure in our countries and not rely on debt or leverage or borrowing from donor nations or donor organizations abroad.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Kenneth Ikenwa, business, political, and social policy analyst. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you for having me on. And permit me to say Happy International Day for the Girl Child. I hope we would have a female president in the nearest future in our country. It is about the best way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope so too.